always right. It's like when I'm right, and when I'm wrong, I could have been right, so I'm still right because I could have been wrong. Man, two podiums go head to head, laying down their logic. You make a valid point, but I own this topic. Your speech, just go and drop it. Don't waste my time giving you the facts. That's the bottom line. It's the argument, man. I gotta represent, man. It's the argument, man. Now watch me represent, man. It's the argument, man. I gotta represent, man. It's the argument, man. Now watch me represent, man.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to The R-Gument. We're your co-hosts,
Stephen Hollingsworth
and Karen Hollingsworth. Thank you so much for joining us today on this last Saturday of Black History Month. As we pondered this year's celebration of Black History Month, we knew the traditional litany of facts and firsts, inventors, and spotlights of our innumerable accomplishments and contributions to this country fell a little short and failed to acknowledge all we experienced this past year. The disproportionate effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on Black and brown people, the racial reckoning of 2020, the protests and social unrest following the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and countless other unarmed Black Americans, many at the hands of police. Fast forward to the violent siege of the U.S. Capitol January 6th by domestic terrorists and the open display of white supremacy and hate. All of these events and lived experiences have shaped and reframed our perception of Black History Month 2021.
How does our past inform our path forward? Where do we go from here? And how do we get there? Whole and intact. Rather than a debate, we've dedicated this show to a Black History Month conversation. Reflections on the Black experience. Today, we'll examine the connection between the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and how the ongoing fight for social justice impacts us mentally and emotionally.
Now, let's meet our special guests. Dr. Esther J. Langston is a nationally and internationally recognized social work educator and practitioner. She earned her BA in Business Education from Wiley College, an MSW from San Diego State University, a third-year certificate in social work and gerontology from the University of Southern California, and a PhD in Human Service Administration from the University of Texas at Arlington. Dr. Langston was selected as a Fulbright Scholar in Russia, India, Korea, and Bangladesh. She began her work in Africa in 1974, and since that time she has served in 12 countries across the continent, with the primary focus of her work being women and AIDS, empowering women, conflict resolution, and inclusiveness of civilians, especially women in the decision-making process. Prior to moving to Las Vegas in 1963 from her hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana, as an Air Force spouse, she was active in the civil rights movement in Shreveport. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ambassador Andrew Young, and Representative John Lewis trained her in nonviolent techniques. She says Dr. King prayed for her to use those techniques when someone spit on her. She is still working on that response. Dr. Langston has had many firsts in her life. However, she made sure she was not the only nor the last one. She was the first African American professor in the Nevada system of higher education, the first tenured professor, and the first African American academic department head. She has served in numerous positions in higher education and social work. She is considered the pioneer of the School of Social Work at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and professional social worker in Nevada. Dr. Langston's professional service includes member and officer in the National Association of Social Workers, secretary and member of the National Board of Directors, past chair of the Legal Defense Committee, and a delegate to the Delegate Assembly. Dr. Langston has served as president of NASW's Nevada chapter, treasurer, committee, and board member for the Association of Baccalaureate Program Directors, member and committee chair for the Association of Deans and Directors of Schools of Social Work, board member of the Council on Social Work Education, and a certified accreditation site visitor and chair. Currently, she is a member of the Commission for Diversity, Social and Economic Justice and the Black Social Work Educators. Dr. Langston is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, where she has served in positions at the chapter, state, regional, and national levels. She planned and led the planning committee to assess programs in South Africa for Delta's involvement in South Africa. She has received numerous awards, including Social Worker of the Year from NASW Nevada and BPD, and the National Association of Black Social Workers. She is co-founder of the Las Vegas chapter of NABSW. She received the President Excellence Award from BPD for her outstanding contributions to social work education nationally and internationally, the Pioneer Educator from the City of Las Vegas, and was selected as Pioneer Social Work Educator for NASW. She was chosen by the City of Las Vegas for the inaugural class of Legends for the newly created Legends Park. Dr. Langston has received awards from the governments of Ghana, South Africa, and Kenya for her international service. Currently, she is Professor Emerita of Social Work at UNLV and serves as Director of the Family Support Services Division for the Center of Academic Enrichment and Outreach at UNLV. Her motto is, "If I have helped anybody, then my living was not in vain." Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Esther J. Langston.
Reverend Anthony Harris is the founder and senior pastor of the Power Center Church in Las Vegas, Nevada. He is also a licensed clinical social worker and licensed alcohol and drug counselor in the state of Nevada. He serves as clinical director of Whole and Healthy Life Management Services, a Christian-based counseling agency addressing the mental health, behavioral health, and family health of the African American community. The agency promotes a whole and healthy lifestyle of the spirit, soul, soma, and social life for individuals, marriages, and families. Reverend Harris is married to Elnora Harris and is the father of 3 wonderful children, Sydney, Reagan, and Anthony. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Reverend Anthony Harris.
I just want some of your sun. Dark clouds seem to follow me. Alcohol that my pop swallow bottle me.
Ladies and gentlemen, please place your mics on mute and keep them there until the end of our discussion. Now to our first distinguished guest, Dr. Langston. We have some questions for you. Take us all the way back and tell us what sparked your interest in the civil rights movement and how did you get involved? Please unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I'm always reminding everybody it's on mute.
That's all right.
Thank you all for inviting me. It's an honor to be here today. My parents were early social justice, social rights advocates. They were some of the few Black people in Shreveport, Louisiana, who was voting in 1940. They were proud members of the NAACP and other organizations in the community. So I always said in the blood. So that's how I got involved. That was my interest. I've always been interested in social justice, social economic justice, and that's how it started for my parents.
So it sounds like it was a family affair. Well, tell us what it was like. We heard in the introduction that you trained under civil rights giants Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Ambassador Andrew Young, and Congressman John Lewis. What was that experience like?
That was a wonderful experience. As they were starting the nonviolent movement, they would come to cities to train persons who was interested in being in the movement, to do sit-ins, marches, etc. And they were training us in nonviolent because, you know, we grew up, if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. If you get in my face, I'm going to get you out. And that was not the message of the tactics that they wanted us to exhibit as we were advocating for civil rights. The training was fantastic. It taught me patience. It taught me to hold my tongue for a minute. I'm still working on that one. And the caveat, as you said, they would spray water in our faces, because one of the things that the antagonists did during those days, they would get a water, tobacco, snuff or something, and they would spit in your face. And I grew up that said spitting on people is nasty and you shouldn't do that. And every time they squirted water in my face, I would swing. So they were trying to get me not to swing. And when we would go on demonstrations, etc., and that would happen, the guys that I was out with would always collapse around me and tell me, "Don't you get us killed."
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, you knew about getting into good trouble from an early age. And I know you're from Shreveport, which is just down the road where we're from, which is Mississippi.
Yep.
So you know all about the Jim Crow laws and segregation. Can you estimate how many protests or marches you participated in?
Whew. Well, I don't really remember. I got expelled from school for being involved. And when I got home, my father asked me, "Do you really believe in what you're doing, or are you following the crowd?"
Wow.
And I looked at him and said, "Now, as you know, I've never been a follower." So he said, "Okay, you can come home and we'll figure out how to get you back in school, because with all of your little activities, you must have an education." So it was around those kinds of experiences. I really, I can't remember. I would probably say 40 or 50 over the course of the time. And the reason I wasn't at the March on Washington in 1963 was by then I had gotten married and I was pregnant. And the one thing my husband said to me, "I've never told you what to do, and you wouldn't have listened anyway, but I'm saying this time you cannot go to Washington, D.C." So I missed the March on Washington because of being pregnant. And that has just been kind of my mantra, that to advocate for social and economic justice is probably why I'm a social worker, because that's one of the things we do.
Absolutely. Well, we want to move ahead a little bit in your timeline. And we know you've had a long trailblazing career as a social worker and professor at UNLV. Tell us a little bit about your experiences as a young Black faculty member.
Well, I came to UNLV when I was 30 years old with a full-blown natural and wearing dashikis. They said I looked like I was 20. So they were always mistaking me for a student. They never could understand that I was actually the professor. And some of the students went home and told their parents that they had a Black female professor. They called me, I think I was a Negro then. We've had so many iterations, I don't remember. I could have been colored, Negro, whatever. But they told their parents, and the parents actually came to class to see if I knew what I was talking about, like they knew. And I welcomed them into the class, "Please come." And I never changed my stance or what I did. And finally, I guess they decided that I must know what I'm doing, and they stopped coming to class. I was in one meeting particularly, and we were having a discussion with all faculty. There were 60 faculty members when I went to UNLV and 2,500 students. And I made a comment, and a male had the audacity to turn to me and say, "Well, if you were at home pregnant and in the kitchen, you wouldn't have to be bothered with this." My nonviolence training did not pay off. and I went black woman crazy on him. And after that, I got a reputation that she's crazy. Do not mess with her.
Wow.
I love it.
Well, I'm sure that reputation stood you in good stead for a while anyway, right? It helped you progress in your career and allowed you to continue on, and you became a tenured professor, the first tenured professor in the Black professor in the NSHE system.
First female tenure.
Female, thank you. So we thank you for the path that you forged for so many of us who have come behind you. Now we want to look at today's social justice efforts. What are your thoughts on Black Lives Matter and some of the social justice protests of today's movement?
I think there needs to be protests. There need to be an awakening, a reawakening, some would say, of the injustices that Black folks have endured since they came to the shores of America. But as you go through the protest and et cetera, you have to get into the boardrooms, into the legislatures, and change that into policy. So in terms of where we stand today, the protest we saw at the summer was all races, creeds, and colors, and I thoroughly delighted in that. And now, as you see, there's beginning to be some movement in turning some of those injustices into policy, and that's where we have to go. And we must vote. We must register all of our friends, relatives, and get them to polls to vote for people who will advocate for us so that we can get some of those things changed.
That's a great strategic plan. So we need to move from the streets into the voting booth and then into the boardroom. Do you have any advice for today's activists to really try to bring about lasting change?
Well, my advice is really what I said. You have to go to where the seats of powers are. And as Charlie Sisson said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. So you may not be invited and you may have to bring your own chair, but you have to be at the seat at the table, because that's where the decisions are made. And that's where your voices are heard. That's why it's very important that we vote, that we look for people to run for offices who will be there to speak on our behalf, who will advocate for our issues, and that we must be supportive of them as they do that. And that is my advice to the activists of today.
That's excellent.
It is.
This question is more of a personal question. How have your lived experiences as a Black woman changed through the years? Do you feel that you're being treated much the same way as you were in those early days? Have we gained ground? Have we lost ground? Where do we stand?
The two things I say I will always be. I will be Black and female in America. People see my color and my sex before they see me. And based on the lens or the prisms that they're looking through, that's how they're going to treat me. Doesn't matter that I have a PhD or no DD. They see a Black female first, and that is the lens for which they view me. My dad and my parents, both of them, always taught me to have self-respect and self-esteem. In fact, at one time in my life, I guess I was so bold with it, he said, we need to dial it back a little bit. And my motto is, you can see me any way you would like to see me, but I will not let you disrespect me. And anytime you think you're going to disrespect me, we're going to engage in a serious conversation. So over the years, that has been my motto. It has not changed. We're still seen as sexual beings. We don't really be viewed as intellectuals, no matter what advances we take or what we have. You know, if a police pulls me over for driving my car, I'm just another angry Black woman or whatever his limbs are that day. And it doesn't matter. And I always tell people, demand your respect.
I like that. It's like she said, that non-violence that you were talking about, as long as that police officer doesn't have any water, right?
Yeah, don't spit in my face.
But we know what you're saying really rings true. It
Yes.
resonates with some of the commentary and the rhetoric we hear around the election of our first female and Black and Asian vice president, and some of the language that's been used to describe her, despite all of her accomplishments and how polished she is. So as you say, people see us before they get to know us. And that's where that implicit bias comes in. One other question here for you. You had the privilege of meeting Dr. King in person. Do you believe that we have achieved Dr. King's dream?
No, we have not achieved his dream. We will, people talk about what is equity and what is equality. Until there is equity, until all men, as that little great historical documents say, all men's inalienable rights are respected and have the same processes, the same avenues to the same great things that we call America. Until that occurs, no, his dream will not be achieved, because we see it every day. We know that's not happening. And even though, like Jesse Jackson says, I have hope alive, and as Preacher Harris would probably tell you, hope springs eternal. So you keep always trying to have hope, and it is my hope, and I use my time and talents to keep working toward hoping that one day America will achieve that dream, whether it's in my lifetime or not.
Well, we thank you for lending your voice to our conversation today, and for all the work you've done historically in the movement back in the 60s, the 50s and 60s, and the work that you've done in your career, and the work you continue to do today in public service and through your community work and civic engagement. So we thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. It was an honor.
Now, our second presenter, Reverend Anthony Harris. Hello, sir. How are you doing today?
I am good. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm excited. I'm really have enjoyed the conversation so far. But I got a couple of questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Why did you decide to focus your practice on Black mental health?
That's a good question. First of all, let me say, when I was a little boy growing up in church, I was always taught to give honor where honor is due. So first of all, I want to honor the two of you, Hollingsworth, for this, what you're doing here. This is a wonderful thing. And secondly, I call her social work royalty. To the great Dr. Esther Langston, one of my professors when I was in school. Much honor to you as well. So God bless you all. God bless you all. I was, I guess a little bit about myself. I am a pastor of a church, the Power Center Church here in Las Vegas. I started pastoring in 2000. And around 2002, when I was in an internship for substance abuse counseling, make a long story short, I found out that I was depressed. I didn't know I was. I didn't know what it was when I was growing up in church, because I'm a church boy. I grew up in the traditional Pentecostal African-American church. We didn't talk about mental health. And when I found out I was depressed, I denied it. I said, not me, that can't be me, because that's just not me. I don't get depressed, that kind of thing. Fast forward years later, 2019, I had a major depressive episode in which I was seriously depressed and just kind of going through some stuff and all of that. And throughout the years, just kind of realized that African Americans, we really don't talk about mental health, and even in the Black church, that we don't spend enough time talking about mental health, although the majority of our congregation are Black, in the Black community. And so, you know, you have Black people coming to church who have all these issues going on, depression, anxiety, so forth and so on. And our answer was to pray. And I'm 1,000,000% believe in prayer, a 1,000,000% believe in prayer, but I also believe that God created us spirit, soul, and body, or soma, and as a social being. And so, you know, just talking to many African Americans, realize the necessity of addressing Black mental health, and hoping and working towards destigmatizing mental health in the Black community and in the Black church.
So why is it that why is talking about mental health so stigmatized in our community?
Well, you know, again, when I was growing up, excuse me, we just didn't talk about it. You know, and actually mental health is stigmatized in many communities, but I'm Black. And so in my community, and that's the community I know as a Black community. I was born and raised African American in the Black community, 89106. I was on the West Side. That's my home. That's where I was born and raised. And so we just didn't talk about it. We just did not talk about it, and everything was spiritualized. I do believe in the spirit realm. I do believe in Satan. I do believe in demons. I do believe in all of that. But there are other aspects of who we are as people that have not been addressed in the Black community. And so now we have a generation full of people sitting in our pews every Sunday that are depressed and anxious and fearful and traumatized, and hearing voices and seeing things, and delusional, and all these different things that's going on. And yet we have a tendency to want to hide it and not discuss it because of the stigma that's attached to it. And so one of my things is I just really just want to do my very best to destigmatize mental health in the Black community.
Yeah. Can you, I mean, with all these things that have been going on as of late, all of the protests, all of the issues that have just been poured on, can you tell us how Black trauma impacts Black mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, African Americans in this country, we know the history of African Americans here, from starting 1619 with indentured servants, and then slavery and what have you, and then even after slavery, Jim Crow laws, which were just legalized racism, and then the civil rights movement, and then even jump to the 80s with the crack era, and single mothers, and you know, those kind of things. And then obviously now with the Black Lives Matter movement. And throughout the course of the years, there's always been some kind of trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation. There's a book out, her name is Dr. DeGroot, who is a social worker, and she came up with a study called post-traumatic slave syndrome. And basically what she was talking about is the passing down of traumas from generation to generation to generation to generation up until the generation we're in today. And the reason why those traumas have been passed down is because we just simply have not addressed them. Number one, that's one reason. That's not the only reason, but the other reasons have to do with the particular environment that African Americans had to endure, coming from generation, with the violence, and obviously with racism, institutional racism, individual racism, cultural racism, and all these different things began to happen to us and continue to happen to us from all the way down. And of course, now in the 2000s and 2010s, with the police brutality that has really obviously become not just national, but worldwide. Obviously George Floyd, but even beyond that, or before that, I should say, in the 90s, in Los Angeles, Rodney King. I was in my early 20s at the time, and that traumatized me. That traumatized me. I was scared to drive. Because I wasn't quite sure what was going to happen if I went 5 miles over the speed limit. But that's something that African Americans have to deal with on a daily basis, which leads us to be traumatized even by seeing it on television. We don't have to experience it. Traumas don't have to be experienced. They can be witnessed. And even when we witness a trauma, that can be something that can disrupt our lives. And because of that, you know, there are different things like hypervigilance, where we get jumpy, and paranoia. And we do get stressed when we see a police car behind us, knowing that we did not break any laws. And, you know, and African Americans have to worry about things that other races, especially the white race, does not have to worry about. White, middle class, law-abiding citizens go 5 miles over the speed limit and they get stopped, they feel safe. But Black, middle class, law-abiding citizens go 5 miles over the speed limit, we get traumatized. We don't know what's gonna happen to us. So that's part of the differences when we're talking about traumas, race-related traumas here in the United States.
Well, what in particular do you want Black men to know when it comes to this?
Yeah, well, I really just want Black men to know that it's okay to talk about it. You are still a man if you admit that I am depressed, or I am scared, or I don't know what to do and I feel overwhelmed, and excuse me, I just don't know what to do. It's okay for you as a man to admit I don't know what to do, or I'm scared, or I'm depressed, or I'm anxious. It's okay. And that, again, that's part of the stigmatizing that needs to take place to actually create an atmosphere for Black men to do that. And that's actually where sisters come into play as well, where you allow, not when you allow, you kind of support a Black man when he says, you know, I'm scared. Okay, baby, that's all right. I got you. I got you. We'll work through this. We'll get through this. Those are the kinds of things that can bring down some walls, some stubborn walls, especially in Black men. But if there's anything I want Black men to know is go get help. It's okay to say, I have a problem. It's okay to go talk to somebody. You're not less than a man. None of those myths, those things need to be debunked.
Yeah, I think that part about feeling like you're less than a man, or that showing that weakness, having been brought up as that being that pillar of strength, to have a moment of weakness. Yeah, it is something that really shows in our community an awful lot.
Let me throw in real quick. This is why I went to go get help. Because when I realized that the depression that I was under in 2019 is really when it got real. 19. That's when it really got bad for me. And I told my wife that I needed help, and she said, "Well, go get it." She just said, "Go get it." So I was open to go get it. I went to go get therapy as a pastor, as a clinical social worker. I went to go get therapy, and was on medication for a brief time. Just kind of helped settle my brain down a little bit so I could focus. I lost focus. I lost concentration. I was not motivated. I was irritable. I couldn't sleep. You know, some of the common symptoms of depression. So my wife told me to go get help, and I felt more empowered and emboldened to go do that without feeling like I was less than a man, or, you know, those kinds of things. So the participation of wives, and maybe even girlfriends or sisters or mothers or whoever, is also really important for a man to just go forward and go get that kind of help.
How can we forge ahead with the fight for social justice with our mental health staying intact?
Yeah, you know, racism and mental health, they go hand in hand with each other. And again, it's addressing really what's going on. It's really addressing, you know, one of the things that we're taught in social work and some of the other helping professions is self-care, and the importance of taking care of yourself and not feel guilty because you do. And this is one of those things that it's called the Superwoman syndrome. And that's one of the, now I grew up in a Black home. I grew up with a Black mother who I love dearly and who did a wonderful job in raising me and my brother and sister. But Black women have a tendency to fall into that Superwoman syndrome, because I know Black women can take care of you. Black women can take care and will take care of you when it needs to happen. But one of the problems, and that's all races will do that, but the Black experience is my experience, and I know Black women will take care of you. But that's one of the issues as well that a lot of African American women face, is that superwoman syndrome, in the sense that they feel like they have to take care of everybody and start to feel guilty when they start to take care of themselves, or need to take care of themselves. So even in talking about social injustice and a lot of the things that African American people still have to experience on a daily basis, taking care of yourself, knowing, okay, it's time for me to take a step back. I need to take a breath. I need to take a vacation. I need to, de-stress, or whatever the case is. So that's really, self-care is really important when it comes to taking care of yourself.
Okay. I think we're going to pass it back to my lovely wife. No, I'll save that one.
All right. Well, at this point, we are actually going to open it up to our audience, and we'll take any questions that you all might have for our guests. So if you would type your name in the chat, and we'll recognize you and let you ask your question.
Hi, this is Cherie Miller, and I do have a question regarding mental health for Mr. Harris. And I work in social services myself, and so I really appreciate you being on this panel today. I've really enjoyed listening to you. But I wanted to know, what's your advice towards mental health care, or what have you had to address a lot of mental health issues regarding the pandemic in the Black community?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually a great question. Yes, many people, because of isolation, obviously the quarantine, but isolation, matter of fact, even with our children, because obviously now is a time for them to be in school and socializing and those kinds of things. Obviously can't do that right now. But yeah, for a lot of people, they are having some problems adjusting. And because for many people, they have been traumatized because of this. There are several types of disorders. One is adjustment disorder, just simply meaning that something happens in your life and you're having a hard time adjusting to it. And other factors can come along, mental health factors can come along with that, again, like something like depression or anxieties or those kinds of things. But yes, there's absolutely have been an increase in mental health reportings and what have you. Domestic violence has reported have been increased as well. Depression and yeah, these kinds of mental health issues have been reported. They've been increased because of lack of socialization and those things that we all we all need in order to have that kind of mental health. So yeah, there's absolutely the fear factor of catching COVID. I'm pretty sure that we all know someone who has passed away from it within the past year. Some people that we, very dear to us, even here in the Las Vegas community, in the Black community, some very dear people to us have lost their lives because of COVID. And so, yeah, there's that fear of getting it. All of that can contribute to mental health problems. Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Going to move on to Mr. Fred Hickman. If you would please unmute yourself.
Mr. Harris, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm wanting to talk to you in the way of jargon. I like to use the term mental wellness. And whenever I'm discussing mental health or mental health issues, and I use that term. Am I correct in using that term when I'm talking about to help someone with their mental health situation?
Yeah, the term mental wellness is fine to use. What mental health period is just really psychological well-being in a nutshell. We can have several definitions of it, but in a nutshell, mental health is just simply psychological well-being. It's just simply how you react or respond to certain life issues and what have you else. And all of us obviously need a certain level of mental health. Mental wellness is fine to use, because that may be a topic or a term that can be used to help destigmatize mental health. Because a lot of times we'll even use the term mental illness, and mental illness is a term that many people don't really like to use. But mental wellness, that's a fine term to use. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I see a hand is raised. Pat Mobley, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I'm unmuted, right?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I was just wondering, I found your conversation to be very interesting to me. And I know that I look to certain heroes that I look up to get me through difficult times. And I was just wondering, because I'm curious, besides your faith, who would you consider some of your personal heroes that's helped you through your trying times?
That's a very good question. I have several ones. My father, my parents. My father passed away several years ago, but and he didn't know a whole lot about mental health and what have you. He was always just my greatest encourager. No matter what I did, he always encouraged me to want to do better. And so he's one of them. And I got to be honest with you, now y'all gonna think I'm trying to kiss up, but Dr. Langston. I'm gonna tell you why. When I first started social work. When I first started social work, there were a couple of black social work teachers that were there, but there was just something about Dr. Langston, that she just had a confidence about her. She had a strength of, not just then, even now, but she had a strength about her. She had a resolve about her. And she just carried this presence, and it was something that I looked up to ever since that time. That was in the early 2000s, actually, when I was in school, and always admired her. My God family, the Parson family, Claude Parson, who passed away, Mother Stella Parson, Dr. Jackie Parson Barker, my God sisters, Pastor Naida Parson, who was a clinical psychologist as well. Those are some of the ones that I personally know that have encouraged me and inspired me. But if I could pick one, it would probably be my dad. He was my biggest encourager of them all.
Thank you. I like that.
You're welcome. And let me say, I would also, if she would not mind, Dr. Langston she's forgotten more than I know. So she can answer too.
Yeah, we definitely want to hear Dr. Langston's answer.
Well, my biggest encouragers were my parents. As you hear, I still talk, even though they have been dead more than 30 years. I still talk very fondly about them, and I'm convinced that my mother sits on my right shoulder. She tells God sometime, let me say this to her. She needs to hear this from me, not you. She was certainly there with me. I have been fortunate enough to have a very good friend and a prayer partner for 56 years. She's a kind of friend who lifts me up when I need it. When I'm off the wrong path, she don't have any problem telling me, and I listen. And she has been there for me, with me. And thank you, Anthony, for that. They already took the prayer, they said, out of school, but I never went into a classroom. I never talked to a student without asking God to guide me, to use me according to what his will and his things will be. Yes, sometimes I fall and you all would piss me off and I would go back woman crazy on you and he would have to correct me. But that has always been my thing for my life, is that for God to use me as his purpose, according to his purpose and his will, no matter where I am. And in addition to whatever earthly knowledge that I acquired, I have always relied on that spiritual guidance to guide me. And I thank you for your kind words. And I can say you were one of those students that I do claim.
I appreciate it.
I would just like I would just like to interject something on a personal level. And since y'all are singing each other's praises, one of my heroes and my personal touchdowns, and she's probably gonna kill me for saying this, has always been Karen Hollingsworth, Dr. Hollingsworth. I can always call her when I'm like, I can't even vocalize what's wrong with me. And she knows exactly what I'm going to say and what to say to me. And I just can't wait for this COVID to be done so I can see her. So she's one of my personal heroes.
All right.
Well, thank you for that, Pat. And I have about 4 wrapped gifts waiting to give to you because we are behind on birthdays, Christmas. We've missed so many holidays. But I thank you for your kind words. And it's not me, as Dr. Langston said, it oftentimes is the leadership of the Holy Spirit, because there are many times you ask me things that I do not know what to say. And I just whisper a little prayer and ask God for direction. So I appreciate that. And while we're doing our little shout outs, I'm going to give Dr. Langston another one. Point of personal privilege, they say. I want to thank her for being one of my sheroes on campus. And she and I have kind of gotten to know each other a little bit more through a sister circle that we have called the Black Professional Women's Alliance on campus. And she was one of the inspirations for that group getting started a number of years ago. And we stay in touch and encourage each other and share and talk about triumphs and trials and challenges. But we consider Dr. Langston to be kind of the dean of that group because of her long institutional history and her life experience. So we always defer to her and her wisdom in that group. So thank you, Dr. Langston.
We got another hand up. Alexandria, if you would please unmute and ask your question.
Hi, Dr. Langston. I'm just so happy to be able to be in this video call. But I actually have a question for you. I was wondering, because I am a recent graduate from UNLV, and I actually worked with the Student Diversity and Social Justice Office. I was one of the Black African American program assistants there. And I was just wondering, what do you think is the best way, just like, throughout the country, how to get more Black students involved on campus, but also making an impact and being able to actually even get in the room and be able to actually help make more impact by changing policies?
Oh, one of the difficult things about doing that at UNLV is because it's a commuter campus. And when you have commuter campuses, kids, people don't stay on campus. They come do their classes and they leave. And so that's one of the difficulties in getting that done. However, I think when you really do some real student organization and outreach and have issues that are relevant to them and want to talk about a plan of how we can go about changing it and making life better for us on campus, you can get participation. We have a Black president now, and I tell folks, just like when President Obama became president, he's still living in a racist world, and he still has to live with racist folks and do what they have to do. But he has made a commitment in his 2.0 to try to address those issues. And hopefully with his commitment and with faculty reaching out to students to get them involved, to say what it is, to come together to talk about what it is and what ways can we move forward, that we will begin to see some systematic changes. I was looking at a study the other day that talked about the number of Black professors at UNLV in comparison to the number of students and white professors. Karen, you remember it was probably less than 1% or something.
Yes.
And we are considered one of the most diverse universities in the United States of America. And yet we have a majority white faculty and a majority white male faculty. And that gets some concerns, and students get turned off. I was fortunate enough in 1960 to be an exchange student at San Diego State. And the courses, I was a business major, and one of the courses that I was taking there was economics. Not only was I the only female in the class, I was the only Black person in the class. And on the first day of class, the professor said to me, "You'll be all right. You probably won't fail. You probably won't pass this course, but that's all right. We don't really expect you to do that." Well, little did he know that the one thing I was going to do with that course was pass it.
Right.
And he would give us social security number. So the first exam we had, he came up with the social security number, and I kept wondering, where's my paper? So finally he said, "Okay, this is a top scorer in the class." And he read off my social security number, and I raised my hand, and he could not believe that was me. As a result of that, although I was only at San Diego State for a summer, I got students in the dorm together talk about what can you do to change these racist policies. Even though I'm going back to a historically Black school that is pouring into me, that is lifting me up and empowering me to be the best I can be. You all need to start this same movement on campus. And little did I know that in 1968, I would be back on San Diego State's campus to get a master's degree. And of course, I followed through on what I had to say and got students involved in looking at how they can change policies and to advocate for themselves. So you just have to work at it. You have to get students to see that it can change. Students are afraid about the grades. If I speak up, I may not get a good grade, and I need to keep my scholarship, etc. So those are all the kinds of issues you have to address when you're working with students and help them to navigate that minefield. I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, ask me what I didn't answer.
You answered it perfectly, and it just makes me really happy just being able to know that there's someone like you on campus that actually cares about us and fights for the Black community on campus. So thank you very much.
I am technically retired, have been technically retired for 12 years.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
Nobody at UNLV seems to understand that I am technically retired, but I really am technically, on paper, I am retired.
Reverend Harris, I think that's that superwoman syndrome that you were speaking of earlier.
Right.
You know, when you're an over.
No, it's not a superwoman syndrome. It's not a superwoman syndrome. Cicely Tyson, in one of her last interviews, I think it was with Gayle King, and asked her why she kept going. She said, "What am I do? Sit at home and make butt prints?" Well, I'm not ready. So I just do the things that where my spirit leads me, where I enjoy. So no, it's just that, you know, I think it's whatever talents God has blessed me with. When I come to the end of this life, I want to be sure I've used them up.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I like that philosophy. My mother says I'd rather wear out than rust out.
There you go.
So I'm with you. I'm with you. Well, thank you so much to the audience for your engagement and your great questions. We've enjoyed this thoroughly. Let's give our guests a round of applause.
Appreciate you.
Dr. Lang.
I really take old folks' privilege. They always say I'm only old when it's convenient for me. So right now, for me to be old. I want to give a shout out to Reverend Harris. I am deeply honored about the work he is doing to bring mental health issues to Black males. We have so many Black males who are dealing with those issues, and for whatever reasons of all of the societal stuff that gets heaped on them, they will not address them. And I really do commend you, Pastor Harris. I have to remember his title because I've known him so long.
I'm Anthony.
I have to remember to address him properly, but I'm very proud of you for beginning to address this issue and to make it publicly. And for those of you who are involved with men in your lives, that you see some issues, encourage them to go for some mental wellness because they need it. You see, we sisters will call each other, we'll cuss, cry, shout, and we will lift each other up and we'll put a band on it, but men don't tend to do that. we will go with different outlets if it's not professional to help us get over that Blue Monday, get over that depression or that bad day. But men tend to don't, and I really do appreciate you for doing this. And I'm promoting you with every Black man I encounter that needs a whole lot of mental wellness.
God bless you, Dr. Langston. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm humble for that.
Thank you both so much. And another point of personal privilege, we've known Reverend Harris for a number of years. We were first affiliated with him through Toastmasters International. And as you can see, he's a very polished and poised speaker. So that bears well for him in his profession as a social worker. So Dr. Langston and Reverend Harris, thank you again so much for sharing your wisdom, expertise, and insight with us today. This has truly been a conversation that we will never forget. Dr. Langston, just thank you. Just quickly, Dr. Langston, how can people stay in touch with you? Or do you have parting words to share?
I'm on UNLV. UNLV allows Professor Emeritus to keep their email address. So if you go to UNLV's website, School of Social Work, you will see my email address, and you can reach me there. My parting words is to all of us involved in this fight, and it is a fight for social justice, social and economic justice. And each of us can do something. And you need to find out what your niche is and what you can do as we try to move us forward in beginning to deal with some of these issues. I know all of us are tired, sick and tired of seeing our Black folks killed by police persons. And until we get involved collectively, that's not going to change. You know, they try to take away the rhetoric that says defund the police, when the message is really reform. And how do we reform that? How do we get involved? There are committees, commissions, and things within cities and counties that they have lay membership on. You need to look at those, get yourselves on some of those committees. Now we're in a Zoom world. They have so many things virtually to get in there and say what it is you can do, and do whatever little part you can to begin to promote that, because I would really like for this to be a different world for my great-grandchildren than the one I'm living in and have lived in. Because you see, I was raised in the Jim Crow era. I could talk about Jim Crow all day. So please do your part, whatever that may be, in order to continue promote this fight for social economic justice and mental wellness, both for men and women.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Why did I tell you this story?
Reverend Harris, how can people stay in touch with you? And do you have any final thoughts?
The children like me.
Well,
the others have it worse. The ones who don't come. I wanted to tell you, as someone who has been through hell,
that you may know someone, or it may be even you that may be struggling with some kind of mental health issue. Even if you're not sure what it is, just go talk to somebody. Just go talk to somebody and say, here are my symptoms, and they'll ask you those things. But to get help, just go get help and go encourage those of you, those that you know that seem to be something's just not right or what have you. Even things like grief. You lost, again, this past year, we lost, some very great people, Reverend Fowler and Brother Williamson, and different other ones in which we lost this past, or in 2020. And some of us, we just don't know what to do. Go get help. Just go talk to somebody. And if they don't know what it is, then they'll refer you to somebody else. But if there's anything I like to say, it's just go talk to somebody. Just go get some help. Just go get some help. I promise you. I tell Christians this all the time. I promise you, you will not be less Christian. You won't be less saved. You won't be less loved by God. If you say, I need help, you're not lacking faith. If you take medications, you're not lacking faith. If you go talk to a psychiatrist or a psychologist or whatever the case is, this is what God has ordained, this kind of knowledge for people to share with other people, help each other, so for us to help each other. So go get help. Go get help. It's okay. I promise you, you're not less than a person if you make the admission that I need some help. It's okay. And you can reach me at actually we're getting our website together now. But you can reach me online on Facebook if you like, Anthony Harris, and kind of go from there.
I thank you so much for that. And I have to ask you just one more question, then I'm gonna get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
What is it like living in your skin as a Black man during these difficult times?
Oh man, I just thank God that He has blessed me, because God has blessed me with enough knowledge to know what to do when it comes to what we're living in, these difficult times that we're living in. But I really think more about my children. I have 3 children, ages 12, 9, and 5. And it's funny because let me tell you a real story real quick. On yesterday, I got a text from my wife. My children do school here at the house. And I got a text from my wife that that his teacher, he's in kindergarten, and his teacher said that he wasn't standing up for or he wasn't saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And then she wanted confirmation that was okay. And we text her back, say, yes, that's okay. Because we teach our children, we try to teach them the things of the world, what's going on in the world, and just be honest with them about racism and those kinds of things. And they had questions regarding George Floyd and what have you. And so one of our things is we teach our kids that although we respect this country, we love this country, we will stand, but we will not say the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, that's just a personal thing for me. And the reason why, and we teach them to always be respectful, but to honor what it is that you say you're doing, pledging allegiance and what have you else. We want you to understand what all that means. And until we see some changes in this country, then we're going to teach our children how to respect this country and how to respect everybody. But at the same time, as Dr. Langston so beautifully stated, but we're going to demand our respect. We're going to demand that respect. As I teach my kids, you teach people how to treat you. And so you gotta make sure that that's going on. And so I wanna, as a Black man in today's society, I thank God that He has given me the voice that He has. And I just want to share this information as much as I can with whoever I can before I leave this earth. I don't know what day that's going to be, but I want to make sure I leave this earth with something left behind to be a blessing to other people. So I'm proud to be a Black man. I love Black people. I love being Black. And so I'm good.
Great answer.
Well, thank you both again so much for your attendance today, your participation, for sharing your wisdom and your insights. We'll be sending a token of appreciation your way, compliments of the argument. And thank you also to our listening audience, our virtual audience. Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Argument. If you have a topic you would like to see us debate, or you'd like to be one of our debaters, send us an email at theargument@gmail.com. Please make sure to be here next month for another great debate guaranteed to bring out the argument in you. God bless and be well.
I'm always right. It's like when I'm right, I'm right. And when I'm wrong, I could have been right. So I'm still right because I could have been wrong. Man, 2 podiums go head to head, laying down their logic. You make a valid point, but I own this topic. Your speech, just go and drop it. Don't waste my time giving you the facts. That's the bottom line. It's the argument, man. I gotta represent, man. It's the argument, man. Now watch me represent, man. It's the argument, man. I gotta represent, man. It's the argument, man. Now watch me represent, man.
Just having the ability to listen to everybody and to